Cloud. I think we're ready. Go ahead, John.
Awesome. Thanks, Lava, and thanks everyone for joining. For those on the line live and in person, and those that are going to be viewing this in a recorded session, we want to thank the SIKICH team in advance. Both Jim, Elizabeth, and Billy are online and going to assist us going forward. And this is the second in what we hope to be a continuing line of Boston ABFO chapter events. Jim, why don't I turn it over to you for intro of your team and what you plan to cover. But at a high level, folks, we're looking to go through some key steps and considerations for folks to think about as you consider selecting an ERP and going through the implementation process. So Jim, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
John,
thank you very much. Oh yeah, go ahead, Slava.
Let me just 2 seconds of tactical stuff. So for the ABFO Boston group, we maintain a membership list. So if you're not getting our communication or our emails, please reach out to me. I'll make sure you're there. I pasted into the chat our LinkedIn group. So again, if you haven't joined that group, please feel free to join. As far as today's session, feel free to post your questions or comments or feedback right into the chat. Or you can ask yourself at the end of the presentation. We'll have a Q&A session. So Jim, please take it away.
Yeah, and Slava and John, thank you both very much for having us on today. We're excited about the conversation. I can kind of start myself, Liz, and then Billy. So my name is Jim Ingram. I'm a sales manager here on the SIKICH team in our technology division. I've been with SIKICH for almost 9 years, and really for the last 8, my sole focus has been working with our life science clients. Liz?
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. So my name is Liz Keefe. You'll see I go by Elizabeth as well, but I am an account executive at SIKICH. I focus on the life sciences area as well. I've been at SIKICH for just about 9 years. The first 8 years at SIKICH, I focused on account management and project management for NetSuite implementations in the life sciences space.
Billy?
Awesome. Billy Timolinas, I'm a director here at SIKICH. I lead our professional services from a NetSuite life science area, and I see a few familiar names, so great to be speaking with you all again.
Awesome. And Jim, just real quick, you guys can see my screen?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, if you want to just go right to the agenda screen, we can start from there.
Perfect.
Yeah, so like kind of John said, we have we're actually going to be covering a fair amount in a short amount of time, right? So at high level, I want to break it down to almost like 3 different sections. Section 1 is going to be pretty quick, making sure those folks here know who we are at SIKICH, understand our life science experience. Kind of that second piece is going to be a discussion around, hey, what are those ERP options out there? What type of functionality should you be looking to leverage, depending on what stage you're in? And then what are those third-party applications that might tie into it? And then the last piece that kind of, obviously Liz and myself will be talking about is, how do you make that decision? When are you ready? What does that timeline look like? And what are those really key considerations that you have as a client, right? When you're about, hey, what selection? How do we select the right solution? And just as importantly, how do we work with the right partner? So Liz, if you want to go to the next screen. So for those folks that don't know who SIKICH is, we are a national professional services firm. We're actually corporately based out of Naperville, Illinois. We have probably about 20 physical offices spread throughout the United States. Billy, Liz, and I are all based out of our Marlboro office. I think everybody outside of that office at SIKICH calls it our Boston office, because they don't realize it's not that close to Boston. We have just under 2,000 people working for SIKICH. Billy, Liz, and I fall under our technology practice. We probably have about a total of 650 people in that space. As you can see from this busy slide, we do a lot of things outside of just the ERP perspective, working a lot of different service lines. We're not going to boil the ocean here. I just kind of bring it up just so you can see the depth and breadth of experience that SIKICH can bring to our clients. Kind of drilling down, we do have a life science practice here at SIKICH. I think most folks probably know us as a premier, NetSuite partner for the life sciences industry, but we do a lot of other things for our life science clients. We help them understand and kind of evaluate procurement systems. Same thing for CRM systems. If and when you get there, We also have a really great regulatory quality and compliance division, and they're helping our life science clients in things like FDA compliance, software validation, quality management tools, and they're working from people as big as the GSK and Merck's all the way down to pre-revenue kind of life science organizations. A couple other things we do, we have a very good, data analytics and AI team that are engaging with our life science clients, having them understand the data and the tools that they're using. Same thing for our cybersecurity practice. And then we can also provide, IT managed services, virtual CIO services. And then outside that, we do have a BPO practice that we do help some for outsourced accounting. So I think between our ERP practice and kind of our RQ&C, we have well over 400 life science clients within SIKICH, right? But from an ERP perspective, we have probably just under 265 ERP clients in the life science space. Full disclosure, 258 of them are on NetSuite, right? We probably have one or two old stalwarts who haven't got off a GP yet. I think we have one business at Microsoft Dynamics, Business Central client. And once again, full disclosure, they're actually kind of engaging with us and looking at NetSuite. And then we do have a few kind of larger pharma clients that are on Microsoft D365 Finance and Supply Chain. So obviously, so you can go back there. So obviously, we've spent a lot of our time and effort specifically on NetSuite. So you will see us talk a little bit about that. I know later on, Liz will probably touch on some of the various aspects of our solution we've developed on NetSuite, but we really want to make this to a conversation around what else is out there. Of those 260 plus clients, about 125 of them are public. I would say predominantly 404A compliant, but we do have about a few dozen that are 404B. A big thing for us too is we're not just dealing with folks that are located here in the United States. We have almost 100 life science clients that have international entities. And those could be entities that are just simple entities that are set up to handle, to take advantage of, R&D tax purposes, like in Australia and Ireland. They could be full-blown operating entities in the UK, in Germany, Switzerland, Asia, India. Sometimes I feel like if you put a map up on the wall and you throw a dart at it, we have a life science client that has an entity there. And then, last on this slide, we have about 36 commercialized life science clients. You might say, hey, that's not a lot, but here in the NetSuite ecosystem, that's actually a lot. And a big driver of that, we are seeing more and more of our life science clients fully outsource, leveraging CMOs and 3PLs as they go commercial. And that really allows you to stay on NetSuite. Even though we do have a number of companies that are doing full-blown manufacturing, both discrete and process manufacturing inside of NetSuite. Liz? So now we kind of talk about the ERP landscape. What are most people coming to us or we're seeing them on? We'll talk a little bit, obviously, about NetSuite, kind of have to, because that is our specialty, as well as some of the other ERP systems we see for that, pre-revenue, typically for those pre-revenue life science organizations. By far, the most common tool that we see coming to us, folks are on QuickBooks. We kind of jokingly refer to, it's like QuickBooks, Prendio, Bill.com, like the holy trinity of pre-revenue life science organizations before they come to us. And then also Microsoft, Dynamics GP. They all have their individual, just individual challenges and reasons why folks look to move onto a new system. With Microsoft GP, and heck, we still have in total from our Microsoft team, we still have about 300 Dynamics GP clients. So we know with that looming date of 2028, that people are really actively looking to get off it. That's a main reason for them, right? For QuickBooks and Xero, absolutely handling scalability challenges, understanding that there's very limited reporting and compliance capabilities. The lack of audit trail, specifically around QuickBooks, is a big key consideration there. And then, for QuickBooks and Xero, we call it multi, right? Having the ability to handle multi-currency, multi-subsidiary, multi-country, in one particular instance, rather than having multiple instances. That's often some of those key reasons why they're coming to us, as well as, companies that are just flat out preparing to go public, right? That is often another key reason. Obviously we've developed our solution on NetSuite. We've invested all of our time here, and it's really for a lot of these things, right? NetSuite is very flexible, it's very scalable, and it can easily grow with your system. I will say this, right? So something like NetSuite or really any of the other options, they're not inherently going to make you FDA or SOX compliant, but that native functionality that they have, the tools, the ability to have that audit trail, it allows you to be compliant much easier, and we can help with that. Obviously NetSuite, it's a cloud solution. It was built to live in the cloud from day one. You have the ability to, sit inside it and have that real-time visibility and reporting for all of those people that are leveraging the solution. And then for those folks that are kind of pushing outside of the United States, they want to run as a global business, NetSuite has got a great tool for that and really can run your operations anywhere in the world. And also a key consideration, as you'll hear us kind of talk about third-party solutions, the ability to integrate into virtually any other tool is incredibly powerful. And outside of NetSuite, once again, we are a Microsoft partner, so we deal still in GP and Business Central and Finance and Supply Chain. And I apologize because we love Microsoft, but they can be very confusing when you start talking about D365 and which of the two solutions, mid-market or kind of tier one or enterprise. And also we do see a lot of even earlier stage folks, it happens less often, but still does, looking to make that jump from a QuickBooks directly to a tier one solution like Oracle or an SAP, depending on the amount of funding they have, depending on what a previous executive has used before, right? And then we also do still see Intact. One of the things that's been interesting of late is we've had a few folks come to us and look to move off of Intact as actually they go kind of global, right? They have multiple entities, especially outside of the United States. That seems to be a much better play here in NetSuite than it does in Liz? So we kind of talk about, hey, what are those ERP components? What do you need and at what points? And that's kind of how this slide is set up. Really, we look at it here at SIKICH is there's two phases or two types of implementations, right? Almost always, that phase one, we call it a traditional life sciences implementation, is what you're going to have first, right? So you're handling things like record to report, right? Your general ledger, your journal entries, your bank rec. If you have multiple subsidiaries, your intercompany transactions and consolidations, right? Handle your financial reporting. Another big piece here is accruals, right? So how are you managing your large dollar spends with CROs and CMOs? And then same thing now, looking at it for things like procurement. What we always do is try to understand a client, hey, do you currently leverage Punchout? If you don't, is that something that you need kind of moving forward? NetSuite is slowly rolling out Punchout, but it's not there yet and probably won't be for some time. So if that's a requirement, we want you to take a look at some third-party procurement tools, which I'll kind of hit on the next slide. Really doing your kind of, at this point, you're doing indirect purchasing mostly. In addition to that, and that's really kind of our core piece. You may or may not need fixed assets. It's probably about half and half. A lot of folks in the early stage size really look at potentially doing them still in an Excel file if they only have a few. We always say, hey, our threshold is 75 to 100 before you really want to put it in your system. And then what we've also seen now is additional things. We have a number of folks that are doing internal R&D. They may be in the cell and gene therapy, and they're kind of have to do it more internal. So then you're leveraging like advanced inventory with lot tracking, expiration dates. And then more and more, we're having really good kind of data conversations with our clients around analytics, BI, and leveraging AI. That second piece, really kind of goes, hey, it's almost like you're going into phase 3 clinical trials. You're sitting down with us and saying, hey, we need to start preparing for commercialization. What does that mean? Well, our first question is always, what are you going to do for manufacturing? Are you going to go in-house, or are you going to outsource it? And that really allows us to take one of two tracks, right? Predominantly, I would say our clients are staying on their ERP and they're on the outsource side, right? So they're working with CMOs, oftentimes multiples, as well as 3PLs, right, to handle the manufacturing and the distribution and the sales of their product. So then you're layering on additional functionality like work orders, assemblies. You're going to be handling your direct purchasing inside of your ERP, right? So that way it really ties to your demand planning and your MRP. And that's going to honestly be both for outsourced and in-house. If you're doing in-house, then obviously we have a discussion around, hey, do you need process manufacturing? If so, there's a great third-party application, Blend ERP, which sits inside of NetSuite that will leverage. You're obviously need to understand what your WIP and routing is. You're going to be layering on things like quality management, lot traceability. You're bringing your sales right into your ERP, your fulfillments, and once again handling that direct purchasing and demand. So we talked about kind of the ERP components, the ERP options out there, and a lot of these, especially in the mid-market, are very good and pretty much complete. However, if you want certain best of breed applications, that's when you're looking to layer on third-party applications and tools. And we're really kind of talk about 6 areas. Number 1, procurement. Like I mentioned before, if you need a full business spend management tool, if you need punch outs, then you're going to look at, the 2 common we deal with are Prendio and Coupa, and we've got a great relationship with the folks over there at Prendio. Expenses, once again, the 2 most common we see are Expensify and Concur. And, I feel like Concur has kind of owned the business when it comes to Sunshine Act reporting for a number of years. We are seeing more and more come on, Ramp and Brex are certainly 2 that we're seeing more and more. When it comes to HRIS, HCM, payroll, the 2 big players are always ADP and Workday. We do see Bamboo in the NetSuite infrastructure here a lot because they've had a tight integration. We also mentioned earlier, how do you handle your accruals, right? Are you in clinical trials? We have a good solution that can manage it in the vendor study side in NetSuite that we developed. But if you want a more fully automated solution, something that's far more robust, best of breed, a lot of our clients are evaluating Auxilius and Condor, and those are really the 2 main pieces out there. Next is FP&A solutions, right? Number 1, we have Adaptive Insights. I still think, to me, that seems to be the predominant player here in the life sciences industry. I can't even tell you how many of our clients we have running it. But also, if you are a NetSuite client, NetSuite has NetSuite Planning and Budgeting. If you're familiar with Hyperion, think about this as kind of a cloud Hyperion that's maybe been scaled down a little bit to work with NetSuite. And then we also see other things like Avena, a Planful, and an Anaplan. And then last, but certainly not least, is AP automation. Number 1, if you're using NetSuite, they have rolled out their own AP automation. It's not always the greatest fit for certain clients. It's hard for us to list them because there are so many, right? Though I feel like there are 100 of them, and then there's 1 or 2 more that's coming on every month. I don't think there's really a predominant tool that our clients are leveraging, and there are pros and cons for all of it. So now that we kind of went through, we went through the kind of the ERP options, the functionality that you may leverage. Now we want to transition into, really evaluating and selecting it, right? So, number 1 is, are you ready? Right? And really, we want to kind of highlight some things for you to think about now, right? As you get ready, and then when you make that decision, some of the things you really stick to, right? So, number 1, before you make that decision, sit down and really understand your realistic budget and timeline. And when I say budget, it's not just, hey, from the dollar and the cents piece, it's what's your budget in terms of time to get this done, right? What are your resources look like? Number 2, you absolutely have to get kind of C-level support. And obviously for us, we work in the finance department mostly. So you're really talking with CFOs. We know that over the last 2 years, while we've all been super busy and we've had many projects done, it seems like it's a higher level. More often than not, it's going up to board level for approval. And then when you kind of think about your ERPs, right? So don't go and get a full list of 8 to 10. Think about 2 to 3, ERPs that, number 1, you feel like will fit your organization today and into the future, as well as have good, associations with the industry that you work in. Really building a great team is another important, right? So form your project team, have them understand their roles and responsibilities in this selection. And to me, define your current business processes. I can't tell you how many times we said it. If all you're looking to do is recreate what you're doing in your current system in a new one, then there's no reason for you to change, right? There's no better time to evaluate your processes and identify those areas where you can either change or optimize them. And then also really understand your current tech stack, right? What are those third-party applications that you're already using? Can they be replaced by native functionality inside your new solution? Are there, with going to a different solution, does that mean you should look at different third-party applications that may have a better, easier integration? And then last but not least on this is your data, right? You know, garbage in, garbage out. Really understand and clean up your data and prepare for that migration to make that, you know, as easy as possible. Now, once you get into the implementation, right, you just went in, you made your selection, you've done your design, you're starting your project, stick to it, right? However, we do know that there may be some decisions that have to make about changes along the way. We want you to make those decisions quickly, right? You absolutely have to think through it, but you need to make those decisions quickly. And I think a lot of that is part of developing your good project team, because here's where we see projects slip. You know, more often than not, I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, but the number one reason why a timeline is not hit, a go live's not hit, it's on the client side. And it's because you're kind of taking too long to make those decisions. You're going to hear us probably hammer it again, resource management, right? Really understanding, building your team, making sure that the people involved in it have the time and ability to take part in this process, right? Yes, it's our job to take the vast majority of your daily responsibilities on this away for you, but it is more work for you on a weekly basis. And then define who those super users are, right? So make sure they're bought into the project. They're going to be engaged in the process because they're gonna help the rest of your organization adapt and really be successful in a new ERP. The next two to me are probably two of the most undervalued pieces from the client side. Change management, right? Change is hard. It's not easy to make a change. People resist change. So really working with your team and your implementation partner to identify those, whether it's key people or processes where folks are really going to have a hard time to making that change. Testing, right? So we're experts in implementing ERP. We're experts in implementing ERP for life sciences, but we'll never know your individual business processes for an organization as well as you do. You need to test properly. Same thing for training, right? So it's our job to make you feel as comfortable as you possibly can moving on to a new system. So make sure you're really kind of, you know, working with your implementation partner, getting the proper training, taking it seriously. So when you go live, it's much smoother. And when you go live, like what type of support you need. And we always say, hey, listen, you know, we're going to get through the project. We're going to come back and help support you in that first month-end closing. Then we go into our project wrap-up. Once you've had that 4 to 6 weeks since go live, you start to really understand, hey, what can your staff take on? What support do you need long-term? You know, work with your implementation partner, whether it's an annual managed services, whether it's having somebody that's an external system administrator, or hey, do you feel like you're really good and all you need to do is pick up the call on a time and material basis? But really think about it and be honest with yourself on what support you need. So Liz, I'll kind of pass it along to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. So building off, are you ready to implement a new ERP system? Another common question that we get is when is the right time? And the answer really does vary based on several key factors here. So the first being you've outgrown QuickBooks. Many businesses start with QuickBooks, especially in the life sciences space, for its simplicity, cost, and ease of use. But as operations get more complex, QuickBooks often falls short in areas such as advanced reporting, consolidations, compliance and segregation of duties, along with multi-entity management. Next is company growth, which goes hand in hand with outgrowing QuickBooks. And as your company scales, you may find that your current systems can no longer handle the volume and complexity of your operations. This is a clear sign that it's time to switch over to something like NetSuite. NetSuite can support you as you grow, through the various stages of a life sciences company, whether you're early stage clinical trial all the way through commercialization. Next is IPO prep. For companies considering an IPO, which is very, it's the goal for most of our life sciences companies, having a reliable and scalable ERP system is essential. NetSuite can provide you with the financial controls, compliance support, and transparency that both investors and auditors require. And lastly, one factor that tends to get overlooked, but I think is just as important as the first three that we mentioned, is the availability of the internal resources to support this transition. So we all know that implementing a new ERP system requires commitment, collaboration across the entire company, not just your finance team. So it's essential to make sure that your team has the bandwidth to make this transition as smooth as possible. So if you feel like you're approaching one of these milestones at your company, and you feel like your team is ready, that is a good indicator to move to the next stage and look at something like NetSuite. So once you decide that the timing is right and you're ready to switch, the next question that comes up is how long is this going to take? So most people think that implementing a new system should take anywhere from 4 to 6 months, but at SIKICH, we typically get folks up and running within 60 to 90 days. And the way that we're able to do that is we have designed a pre-built package called Suite Success for Life Sciences, which is made up of reports, roles, workflows, and dashboards based off the industry trends and standards that we see in the life sciences space. So following the ERP selection comes another very important decision, one that we consider that's actually maybe more important than the actual ERP selection, and that is choosing your implementation partner. So first and foremost, you just need to define what's important to you and your team. Each company has its own, unique priorities, so it's really essential that you get together and define a criteria that you guys think will drive success for this project. The first being industry expertise. So look for that partner with experience in your industry. Sometimes it's really as simple as that. That partner will understand your specific challenges, the regulatory requirements that you have, and best practices that you'll be able to apply to your business. And in the long run, it really does make a difference for the speed and the quality of that implementation. And we always say, don't be afraid to ask specific questions or ask your partner for some references. Next is cost versus value. At SIKICH, we say you get what you pay for. You really want to consider the balance between cost and value. The cheapest option isn't always the best, and the partner that you pick should be able to provide you with value through expertise, support, and a proven track record. And that partner may not always be able, might not be the cheapest up front, but the return on investment in the long run could work out if you choose the right partner. Next is timeline. You really want to be able to assess your partner's ability to meet your timeline requirements. Some partners may promise a quick implementation, but you really want to make sure that they have the correct resources and experience to deliver the project on time, but you also want to make sure that they don't sacrifice quality if they say that they can do it quickly. Next is vendor versus partner. And we talk about this all the time at SIKICH, how there really is a difference. There's a difference between a vendor who will just implement NetSuite and walk away versus a partner who is truly invested in the lifehood of your partnership. You want to look for a partner who will collaborate with you, offer guidance, and also adapt the solution to fit to your business while being in it, with you for the long run. And then lastly, I know Jim mentioned this a little bit, but post-go live support is very important. You want to consider the support that you'll need after go live. A good implementation partner will provide you with troubleshooting, extra training, or just helping you optimize the system as you evolve. You know your team best. You might need extra hand-holding the first few months of go live, or you could be off to the races and just needing a few periodic check-ins. Regardless of your team, your partner should be able to be flexible within your needs. So to summarize here, selecting the right partner is key, and it can be the success for that smooth implementation and also the long-term success for your organization. So next, when planning an implementation, there are several factors that you should focus on for a successful rollout. And this really goes back to my project management days, but with the design, you want to start with a strong design that aligns your business processes and goals. One of the most important aspects of a design that we say here at SIKICH is just making sure that the right people are in the room. It sounds simple, but it's very important. You want to make sure that not only the decision makers are in the room, but also the people who are going to be in your system day to day, because at the end of the day, those are the ones who are going to be the users. A well thought out design is really the foundation for an effective system. Next is future proofing. So you want to build your ERP system with scalability in mind. NetSuite should be able to support your business as it grows. And we all know in the life sciences space, you can start with 10 employees and then 8 months pass and you're operating with 60 people. And you just want to make sure that the flexibility is top of mind, and especially your future needs when designing these systems. So next is reporting, another thing that is very important in the life sciences space. you want to make sure your reporting requirements are known from the start. Quality reports will ensure that you get actionable insight that support the decision making at your company. And at SIKICH, we have created a number of pre-built reports that are ready to go at go live based on the information that we've collected from our clients based in the life sciences space. So next is data migration. I know Jim hit on this as well, but clean and accurate data is essential for a successful go live. You know, when it comes to data migration, we're talking about it in the design because it's just essential that your team knows how important it is to bring over the data that you want. A smooth transition of data really ensures the operational continuity and the reliability of this new system. Next is training and testing. You know, comprehensive training and testing are just key to user adoption, and user adoption is huge when taking on a new ERP. Training ensures that your team knows the system, and testing just catches those bugs before you guys go live. And next is integration. You know, Jim touched on a number of solutions that really, you know, work well with NetSuite, and we just want to make sure that you identify and set up those integrations before, you know, you go live. Seamless integrations enhance the workflows and prevent data silos within NetSuite. And we always say NetSuite should be the source of truth, so we encourage you to integrate the systems that you have with NetSuite, but just making sure that, you know, NetSuite is at the top of mind when you do so. Next is go live resourcing. Just ensure that you have the dedicated team, you know, when it comes to go live. This is critical for smooth transition and addressing any issues. We know, you know, things happen during go live. It's a new ERP. It's a big transition for both teams. But as long as both teams are staffed properly, we should be able to mitigate any issues that come up pretty quickly. And then lastly, you know, support and managed services. We just like to hit on this because it really is important, and you want to make sure that you're planning for the ongoing support and managed services that your team might need. A lot of the times having access to your implementation team post go live is a huge advantage for you and your team. You know, you create these relationships with the consultants. That's who you're comfortable with. So sometimes, you know, purchasing that managed services plan up front could be beneficial because you know, you're working with the team that you know, and you guys are getting you know, resolving these the issues that you have much quicker than you would on your own. So each of these components really do play a vital role in the success of the NetSuite implementation, just setting you up for success. So here is just some implementation advice and a bit about you know, competitors in the space. But at SIKICH, what we like to do is we like to engage with our clients to understand what went right during the implementation, what areas they wish they knew about beforehand, and really what also we could have done better during the project. We do this by you know, reviewing a client scorecard with the project team during the wrap-up meeting. And it's really the way that we're able to serve all of our clients better and also improve as a team. So I won't read the feedback word for word, but you'll get a good understanding about what you know, current users and decision makers have said about implementing. And then lastly, you know, we understand that there's many competitors in this space. We just say, do your due diligence. You know your team best. You know how you guys work. Make sure that you check client references and really take seriously, you know, finding the right partner because it is very important, you know, during the ERP implementation process. So lastly, we just gathered a few screenshots of some dashboards and some checklists inside of NetSuite. It's always nice if you haven't seen NetSuite just to kind of look at the interface. So this is an accounting manager's dashboard that we've taken a screenshot of. The next is the employee center dashboard, you know, mainly used for approvals. And then lastly is the period close checklist, which is one of our users' most you know, desired feature of NetSuite. So that is all that we had for you. Slava, any questions that came in?
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, Jim. I don't really see any questions from the audience yet. I think they're just excited from hearing this. Please line your questions, send them in the chat, or just raise your hand, unmute yourself, and proceed. And while we're waiting for your question, maybe I'll fire a few of my questions, if that's okay with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure if you covered that and I missed it or not, but Obviously, NetSuite is a broadest installed base for the life science as the first real ERP. Are there instances or cases where you look at the client and you actually think that NetSuite wouldn't be enough? Like you would recommend that they go to something more robust like Oracle or SAP?
Yeah, there's certainly times, right? So I think the biggest step point there is around your man. If you're commercial, right? If you're commercial and you have very heavy manufacturing and supply chain requirements, and even heavy like gross to net requirements, that realistically would be where we would say, hey, maybe it's not the greatest fit. Like I said, though, we do have a number of life science companies that are doing full manufacturing in-house. If you're not yet commercial, it's a hard one because odds are you're pretty much a great fit for NetSuite. Billy, anything I'm missing on there on that aspect from the services side?
No, I mean, that's spot on. And I think, size comes with commercialization. So that is, typically the driver of taking the next step up.
Awesome, thank you. Maybe a flip side to that question, again, from your experience as you work with the, a typical life science company coming off the QuickBooks, are there any instances or ever a case where you do your initial assessment and you don't recommend that they migrate off the QuickBooks?
Yeah, and there have been times, right? And we try to be really honest with the people we're working with, very transparent. If you're talking to a one-person team, and they're we all know that pre-revenue and early stage life science companies are running lean, and they're not just running lean in finance. Really, it's across the board. If it's a very, very small finance team, 1-2 people, and they don't really have, they're not public, right? They're generally handling their requirements in QuickBooks, and they don't have the time to devote to implementing a new system. That's when we say, listen, it's in your best interest to wait. Another time too is when folks are in the midst of, they want to go to NetSuite or want to go to a solution, and they're in the process of hiring, say, a controller or an assistant controller. Oftentimes we're going to say, hey, hold on, let's get that hire in there. We want that person to be a part of the design and implementation because it's going to make it easier for the rest of the team. Once again, Billy, Liz, anything else you'd suggest on that side?
Jim, that was spot on. Yeah.
Awesome. I have a question from John who says, on the FP&A side, how easy or how much more complicated is connecting Adaptive to NetSuite versus the embedded NSPB?
Billy, I'm going to let you take that.
Yeah. I would say high level, for the pre-revenue, I don't think it's any additional effort, right? NSPB comes pre-connected, and now the integration is actually taking the next step where it's just going to be pre-built versus turning on a connection. That being said, the connection to Adaptive, I think, is pretty easy. It's more on the commercial side as you go towards that, where you have to bring more data in. I think that's where Adaptive gets a little bit more cumbersome versus, Oracle having already built up all that connections.
Trin actually made a meaningful update to that. She said, obviously, Adaptive is widely used, but there are many tools other than Adaptive. So if you think about the NSPB, which is embedded, right, versus clients using Adaptive or similar tools already, maybe I guess a question would be connecting those other tools like Adaptive into the NetSuite. Do you actually recommend that people switch to NSPB, or do you let the planning tools stay as they are and just deal with connectivity?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say to start to attempt to answer that, I think Adaptive and NSPB in terms of how they connect to NetSuite are in a league of their own. The other tool, there's other great tools out there, right? We see Planful, Anaplan. I'm missing one off the top of my head, but those actually take integration work to get them set up and connected. That being said, if you feel like you have a great data model, if FP&A likes the tool, I still think it's worth it. Just because of, as you're building up your organization, right? Accounting goes one way, if FP&A almost goes another. So again, I don't think they don't have to be perfect. They don't have to be from the same, cloud provider, said another way. But that would be my perspective on it.
Thank you. And team, please feel free to just unmute yourself and ask the question if you feel comfortable. If not, I'll read off your question from the chat. So while we're waiting for more questions, maybe we can spend a few minutes on a process, because I know as your clients are eager to jump into the ERP implementation, to get the tool design and the process going, the existing process is critical, right? How mature the client's accounting organization is, how mature the monthly close process are, consolidation, all of this good stuff. Can you talk maybe in your layout for the implementation project? How much time do you devote, and how do you guide people through either maturity matrix or just inventory of their existing processes?
Yeah, Jim, I'll start with this one. So high level, we actually want you to come open-minded to the design, and let us give you the opportunity to show you industry best practices for the system, right? We're not going to necessarily say you have to have this chart of accounts, but we're going to say, here's a recommended AP workflow. Here's a recommended journal entry workflow, things of that nature. That being said, you do want to pull your existing processes. You want to bring your pain points, because we do want to address those too. But I would say, when you're looking at a project like this, it has its peaks and valleys from a workload perspective. We want everyone involved in the design. It's going to take 8 or 12 hours, but it's worth it from your team. Let's bring everyone together. Let's be decisive, but let's move on. Was essentially the messaging from Liz and Jim. Next thing I would say is, there's going to be a peak from training, from testing, a peak from go live, but just please, 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 if I give you any advice, do not underestimate data migration. Don't consider it the easiest task. Honestly, it can be the hardest task. It takes a lot of time to take the data out. It takes a lot to massage it. QuickBooks is not user friendly. You're most likely taking a report, putting it to Excel, manipulating it, trying to get it in the right format. So yeah, if you spend the time there, you're probably looking at 2 days to get things like the master records out, like your vendors out of a system and chart of accounts. You're probably looking at a week of time to get your data out for the transactional history. And then if you're making changes, that adds on top of it. So if you're doing a new chart of accounts, you got to remap the data, right? Like things like that. Jim, Liz, did I miss anything?
No, that sounded great. And then just to add, when we kick off an ERP implementation, we always do a project planning meeting and kickoff meeting where we kind of meet with the core team. And we'll outline, exactly what Billy said. We'll make sure that the team knows, you guys need to identify resources to do X, Y, Z, right? A lot of it being the testing, the training, the data migration. And we actually put hours, it's a range, but we allocate hours to that for the client team, so they kind of understand what they have to do on top of their job.
Terrific. I got another question, unless anybody else wants to jump in. So while people are here we go. Trin, do you want to, if you want to ask yourself, please fire away. While we're preparing on that side, so there are quite a few actually life science companies that have either multiple subsidiaries or at least US and European subsidiary. It's a complicating factor. Can you speak maybe about the implementation approaches to when the company has more than one entity? And is that better to do sequentially? Is it better to do at the same time? Any kind of lesson learned and considerations for those of us in life science that have more than one entity?
Yeah, I would, so to start, it all depends on the system. Some systems treat a company as a separate database. So, some of the Microsoft systems, you log into one company, you do your work, you log out, you log into the next company. Other systems like NetSuite, they're more global focused, and you're just within one application, and you really have no idea you're not really in a sub, if that makes sense. It's just another dimension. So it makes it easy from the perspective if you use the same business processes globally, it's pretty easy to deploy. With going international, again, it comes down to, I would say, intercompany process and then also the data and the statutory reporting requirements. So, if you've been doing consolidated financials in Excel, which is a very common use case for companies coming from QuickBooks or Xero, or, you've been doing intercompany transactions as, individual journal entries on both sides, those types of things have to be evaluated because they cause complexities with the migration. All the systems do consolidations just a little bit differently. They tend to get to the same, end result from a consolidated reporting perspective, but it just, if you don't spend the time there, the most common thing we see, I would say, is the cumulative translation adjustment on your financials is not accurate. And that's an audit nightmare. I don't know how else to put that one. And no one wants that. So does that answer the question for you, Jose?
It does. I guess there is a specific unique complexities because European accounting systems sometimes are a bit more complicated than what most US-based life science uses. So you end up with a lot more complexity, not just ×2 for QuickBooks in the US instance, but a lot more complicated processes and a lot of times outsourced accounting support, etc. So maybe out of your installed base and maybe out of the clients that you helped, how common or how frequent do you have to deal with that? Is that a common occurrence or is that more one-off?
Oh, no, it's common. I would say a lot of our clients say, oh, we got this outsourced firm just doing the books for us. And they're going to keep doing the books. And so they might set up a sub and just load, monthly trial balances into NetSuite. Others might want to start to bring that firm on. Others might hire, right? Honestly, I think it's easier when you're not in the middle, if that makes sense. You're either outsourcing or you have your team and you're bringing them onto the system for those complexities. But I would say we see a little bit of everything.
Gotcha. I think we're coming to the end of time for this session. So maybe last question, unless anybody else wants to jump in, would be, what are the, handful of 3 to 5 critical success factors that you guys come across when you take on a client and all the way through implementation? What do people mostly regret at the end if they didn't do, or what do you tell or advise people to pay particular attention to make it success?
Let's see. And Jim and Liz lay out a lot of critical success factors for every project. I think number one, and Jim and Liz, you can chime in, but the number one is always about either going or prepping to go public. I would say that is on every single one. In terms of being successful there, I think that comes down to people, right? You want the whole project team involved. You don't want to start, as a controller or account manager designing a system and then 2 to 4 weeks down the road, bring an outside firm in to do like a segregation of duty audit and things of that nature, because they're going to change your processes on you no matter what. So, I would, keep that in mind. If that's something that's coming, just bring them in early. Let's see. Number 2, I think it comes down to your data structure. You want to track department. Of course, you have your GL accounts, but you want department spend, you want program, you want project, and the different variations, target indicator or other terms for that. I would then say, after that, it's about how you roll it out to the business. And usually I would say approval workflows are what touches the business the most. But that really is the one that we drill down on all that feedback related to testing that we said earlier, right? It's, if something goes wrong in the system from an accounting journal entry perspective, the project team can work to resolve it. Tons of testing is required for anything you roll out to the business. And so, defining clear approval structures that basically state, here's a transaction, who's going to approve it is great. you don't want to have a spider web of all your different approval processes, would be the short of it. Jim, was anything to add to that?
One thing I would probably just add, especially from a project management standpoint, and I know Jim mentioned this in the beginning of the presentation, but just knowing your client team, and it's okay if you think that you're going to need 2 or 3 extra weeks of testing, as long as we communicate with each other in the beginning of the project, that that you have a vacation coming up, or that you're closing the quarter. All of that is fine, and it's things that we're used to. We just need to know and kind of plan it out. So just being honest with yourself, and your team, and knowing that 2 or 3 weeks in the long run isn't going to make or break anything, once you're off and using NetSuite, but it could really be, a key to a successful implementation, during the actual timeline. So just being open and communicating as much as you can, between the two teams, I think, sounds obvious, but, at the end of the day, communication lapses are where things can really go off the rails.
Yeah, and one thing I'd add is be future, like, forward thinking, right? Think about what the future may entail for your organization, and help design a system that can be nimble and flexible to adapt to anything that might come your way.
Excellent. Guys, thank you very much. This has been terrific. John, do you want to unmute yourself with a few parting words?
No, I'll echo what you just said, Slava. Thank you to the SIKICH team. Appreciate all the insights. As someone who's been through a NetSuite implementation and has used several of the tools that you mentioned in the integration opportunities, I can speak firsthand to the experience of going through it. So if folks do have questions, I'm always happy to provide real life examples, and fortunately there haven't been any war stories or difficult moments. It's been relatively seamless in all 3 instances that I've been experienced with implementing NetSuite in the past. So again, appreciate the time and information here, and Slava, appreciate your help in putting this together, and look forward to sharing this with the broader audience, and hopefully it'll be helpful to others who might be considering going through a similar process, or are questioning what those next steps might look like or entail.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Terrific.
Thanks
Thank you,
all.
everybody. Take care. Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you very
Good
much.
job.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.